right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Spring Equinox Jubilee. I'm A. Rose Mapstone, and today we have a very special guest, a dear friend of mine for a few years now, which is so cool to say. I'm so honored to know Christian Klausner, astrologer extraordinaire. We were actually just talking about a lot of amazing things, and I actually wish I had hit record earlier, but I think, what flows will flow, and I'm so here for it. So, hello, Christian. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing very good. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. So, if you want, you can tell us a little bit about yourself and the wonderful work that you do as an astrologer.
Okay. Well, my name is Christian. I was raised a Christian. Grew up in the church, had a lot of awesome friends, grew up in that faith. So God has always been really close to my heart, but I kind of went full circle in my spiritual journey. I went away from the church. I started to despise religion and see what it had done to the world, and went more of the hippie route, like more towards God is an energy. It's the all, and kind of fell away from my roots. Came into astrology, which showed me that the root of all religion. It showed me that astrology is the root of all religions, and I grew to love it. So I found that God was pulling me into this and giving me a practice by which I could better know myself and know and understand others. And I found that self-knowledge is really the root of all knowledge, because if you can know yourself, then you can start to know this universe, because there's the macrocosm and the microcosm, and we're the microcosm, which means we're just like a holographic reflection of the whole of the universe. And so it made a lot of sense out of things that I had learned early in religious teaching, and it made it more like concrete, a little more tangible and livable for me. So, I'm a Leo, so the lion has always been my favorite animal. And so when I started to get into astrology, I was like, what? I'm the lion? Oh, that's awesome. And then I learned that it's ruled by the sun. And I learned about analogy, which is what astrology is based on. Like the sun is the heart of the solar system. So the sun represents your heart, it's your core, and it's your life force. And so I'm all about returning to the heart, because Leo rules the heart, and salvation is of the heart. Even the Christian religion talks about we must be reborn of the heart, and that it's a heart thing. So I've learned that God is not judging us about the things we do. He's not holding those things against us. He wants your heart, which means he wants you, he wants all of you to transform you. And so I found that was so beautiful how astrology showed me that. And then I kind of returned to my roots a little bit more, and seeing how Christianity is one of the only religions, as far as I can tell, and I would love to be corrected on this, but I've studied I love all the religions. I have all their scriptures right here, Bhagavad Gita, the Hindu ones, and I just love them all. But as far as I can tell, Christianity is the only one that calls for repentance, that you must go and repent in order to be drawn back into the kingdom, which is inside of your own heart. And it has to do with achieving peace, because if there's conflict in your kingdom, then you're not there. You're not in the kingdom yet. And he can't draw you in, because he's not going to let you in to your heart fully when you have Satan's nature, as the Christians would say, which is hate, which is anger. So I've been on a journey, and my journey has taken me through astrology to show me my cycles and show me that I'm creating my life and why I'm creating it, and to show me who I am and allow me to take responsibility in seeing that everything that I see is myself. It's created from me. Just like the sun is like projecting this reality, it's like the projector on the screen. You're the projector, and what you see on the screen is coming from you. And if you can just have that basic mindset, you can overcome anything, because now you're not blaming, you're not being a victim, and you're not powerless to change it. So the power does lie with you. And I can see that now. So that's been my journey with astrology, is to show people that it's all inside of them. And we can gain a lot of insights about the planetary transits and how you're being affected now. But there's nothing quite like coming back home to yourself and realizing that you're the creator and you're at the cause and not the effect. So, so now kind of full circle, I guess you could say I'm a Christian because I like that religion a lot. And I see now that religion is not the cause of the wars. It's not the cause of the famines, as I used to believe. The cause of that was evil people, in the name of religion. So it's not the religion. And I've learned that my anger was misplaced and that I was wrong for being angry. And I didn't know that. I would always justify my anger. So anyways, as I was telling Amelia before this, I've had a transformation in 2020 when I went and told my parents that I forgive them. And this is the number one thing I got to give my clients now, because as much as astrology has changed my life for the better, my number one transformation, my true rebirth, came when I told my parents that I apologize for resenting you. You couldn't help it. You did the best you could. I forgive you. And since then, I've not been angry once. It's so crazy, Amelia. I did not know life could be like this. I thought anger was just an emotion. It's just a human thing. But I see now that it was a spirit that was controlling me, because whoever you're angry at can control you. And you got to return to your soul, which is sovereign, which is free from that anger dynamic. And so when you have anger, you can't see when you're being played. You can't see what part you're playing in these dynamics that are controlling your energy, and you're being used, and you don't realize it when you have anger. So I wish somebody had told me this earlier, but that's okay. 26 years, not bad. And so now 27, and I'm free from anger. And I didn't know that was possible. I didn't know that was a thing. So now I'm overjoyed, and I wake up every day with peace in my heart. And my number one desire is to share that peace with whoever wants it. If you don't want it, no big deal. Only those who seek will find. So if you're not seeking, hey, no big deal. Just live however you want. But for those who are seeking, I really want to help them find the way, because it took me 26 years and it was an amazing journey, but there's nothing like peace, because peace is from within. So it will never leave you. It'll never change once you find it. But happiness will change. Happiness is based on people, places, and things outside of you. So that's what peace is, being at peace even though you're not happy. And that's the foundation upon which then you can build lasting happiness and really transcend. You can be in an unhappy zone, but still find happiness in it because you have peace. So if we can just return to peace, we'll solve the wars, we'll solve the famines, and we'll solve every issue that we see on the screen of our awareness. I just know it. I know it for a fact. So we got to return to our hearts and forgive our parents, because they couldn't help it, because you become what you hate. So you will pass on that never ending cycle of hate until you forgive. And that's how we turn it around, folks. I believe that's how we will turn this thing around. Overcome your anger, go and forgive your mother and father, and your life will change. And I'm here to help if anybody needs help in that process, because it's the hardest thing you'll ever do, but it's the last time you'll have fear, because perfect love casts out all fear. And so when you let go of your anger, your fear leaves, your doubt leaves, your insecurity leaves as well, and you'll have peace. And that's what it is for me, Amelia.
I love that you managed to squeeze everything that we talked about prior into that. That is so good. You're so eloquent. So thank you.
Thank you. It doesn't sound eloquent when it's coming out, but I channel a lot for my work, so I just trust what comes through me, and that's my testimonial. So I could tell it over and over.
Well, I appreciate it. And I totally vibe with the whole channeling thing. That is basically how I end up seeming so tactful. Like I've had people comment on the content that I make on here, and they're like, wow, like how are you so eloquent? It's like, well, it's all spirit, it's only a slight amount of ego that sort of gets the ball rolling, like turning on the camera or whatever. But after that, who knows what happens? So I
Totally.
totally get it. So much packed into that I wanted to respond to, but what comes to mind
Mhm.
mostly is the mother and father forgiveness. And I love how you related it to the creator. And this equinox is interesting because I know you asked me why I thought it was important, but I want to ask you now. And then maybe I'll
Hmm.
share it too because I wasn't recording before. How
That'd be
this
great.
spring equinox, the light and the dark energies, how we can find balance within that mother father energy, right? Those are mirrors of each other. So if you could talk a little bit about that, that would be awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah, the feminine does represent the magnetic dark, this drawing in darkness. And the masculine energy, which is the electrical light energy, does represent this radiation and this light principle. So that is represented in astrology by the sun and the moon. And doesn't mean that women are evil and men are good. And that's probably been the common misinterpretation by those who have corrupted the system. But rather, it represents that when we can unite in harmony, we can transcend the appearance of duality, the appearance of conflict. And astrology teaches that as well. There's always an opposite sign for every sign. The 12 signs are just 6 pairs of signs, which correspond to the 6 chakras, and the 7th one being the transcendence thing, which is when we can see that all oppositions are complements. And this is why I love astrology. Astrology will show you this. But the equinox is a state of dynamic equilibrium, is what some astrologers have termed it, where the days and the nights are equal length. But during the spring, which is Aries, the light is beginning to wax and the darkness is waning, which means that the light is growing, the days are getting longer, and the nights are getting shorter. And so the spring represents God's promise that there is always new life, that there will always be new life, that there is rebirth in this universe, and that we will want that there is victory. It's the promise of victory. And so spring equinox is always an amazing magical time. And Easter kind of reveals this promise a little bit. Of course, they have the symbols of fertility, like the eggs and the bunnies and stuff. But there, it also, Christianity adopted it because of the rebirth symbol, which is timeless. Christianity doesn't own it, but it really comes from astrology, which shows this in nature, how there is rebirth. And so that's why I love the spring equinox, because it's God's promise that we have once again overcome the darkness. But what I love so much about it, especially in the masculine and feminine dance that we have, is it also foreshadows that there will come a time when the darkness will grow once again. And so spring is a time to celebrate that it's spring and to revel in it. And to embrace that thing in the back of your head that's like, but the opposite's going to happen too. And it's just knowing that, the dark follows the light as the night follows the day. And when you unify, when you have peace with both, um, then you can overcome the darkness within you, by realizing that the light shines in the darkness. So, and this is an amazing spring equinox, and I'd like to hear what you have to say. But one of the reasons I think it's extremely special is because shortly after, I think it's on the 28th, then we have a full moon. So the spring equinox is on the 20th, when the days and the nights are equal, equinox, equal nights. And then on the 28th, we have a full moon in Libra, and the sun will be conjunct Venus on the exact moment that the moon reaches full light, which is just so crazy. So conjunct means conjoined. So the sun and Venus are going to be right together. And Venus rules Libra, but it's in the opposite sign with the sun and opposite the moon, which will be at full illumination. So this is a coming of a realization of peace on earth. This is a new realization in our consciousness about what it means to relate to your opposite. And I think this is going to help people clear a lot of things out. But of course, with every transit, there's always the opposite that is accentuated. So we'll probably have a lot of, potential for conflict as well. People who are too outwardly based and don't want to look within and see how they're creating their relationships. So it's a very interesting time, but I'm hopeful about it because of what Venus represents. And being in Aries, this is about having a new love for, this courage that we can create in our relationships and surrendering to the other and in learning to love and care for the other.
Yes, I could not have said it better myself. And so with our Sun and Venus conjunct, I believe, because you jogged my memory, aren't they also conjuncting Chiron in Aries at that
Oh,
time?
you're right. Yes,
Which is like
that is big.
huge, huge healing, like the biggest opportunity. And I was just talking about how I recorded a horoscope the other day for that. And I was like in the middle of it and still having these like downloads and surprises. I was just like, oh, there's too much to fit in this like 10 minutes. Like I'll have to go live at some point and talk about it because as the energy is moving closer, I mean, oh, there's so many ways in which it can manifest. When Chiron, the wounded
Yeah,
healer, comes in, it's just an absolute huge recollection of how you can like wound yourself, but also how you can wound others and how you can heal yourself and heal others. And that mutuality is just electrified by that Libra full moon, right?
absolutely. Well said.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
um, what there's something else oh yeah, while you were talking about the seasons and the shifting, I realized too, so I think you mentioned this, right? Forgiving the mother energy, right? Forgiving the feminine, and how a lot of people will hate on the feminine, but that's hating on yourself. And I'm starting to see the ways in which the collective does this, like in nature as well, because I think most people, especially where I am in the northern hemisphere at least, hate on winter and darkness. And so every time like the fall equinox comes around and the winter solstice, there's this sense of just like self-deprecation and just disliking of like the weather and the snow and like, oh, it gets darker earlier and like how upsetting. But when, spring comes along, it's like, oh, thank God, sun. And I used to be guilty of this because I was vitamin D deficient, so that helped a lot. But I also just was like depending on that light when I didn't realize that that light is resonating in me. Even when it's gone, it's not really gone, it's just facing away for a hot second. It's like how we seek the attention of others when they're looking away from us. It's like, hello, they're still present. It's just, we're all moving in these shifts and changes, and it's okay. Like, take a deep breath. So, but I just thought that was interesting, and I'm wondering if you have any advice on like how we can heal those wounds and forgive the feminine, forgive the mother who birthed us, which even is like forgiving Earth and asking Earth for forgiveness because we maybe have not treated her as children should treat their mother, right?
Right. That is so deep. I'm so glad you asked
I
that.
know there's a lot packed there.
Because yeah, it's deep. Hate runs really deep. Because hate is evil and it's deep. So but I love how you brought that up because it's so funny. So I was reborn in 2020 when I forgave, when I verbally forgave and faced my mother and father and apologized for resenting them. So that happened in 2020. This was the in the spring of 2020, and we just made it. We're about to make it out of winter. This was the first winter, Amelia, that I have enjoyed. Because as a Leo, I love the heat. I want it to be hot. This was the first, and that is so symbolic
Me
because
too. I had the same
now,
thing happen. That's crazy.
wow. Yeah, because the dark and the cold, and you just want to get back to the light, but you have to embrace the dark and the cold. And that represents the feminine, the cooling energy, whereas the masculine is very hot and burns and acidic. Um, so we see this everywhere in nature, but it's so symbolic that now that I've dealt with my mother and overcome her identity, because you become what you hate, and it's very sly because I didn't realize I hated her. Um, I just thought it was anger. I didn't know that anger was hate. Um, and so now that's the first winter I've enjoyed. So I've seen it in my own life in being able to enjoy what I used to always want to try to get away from. And that really is what peace is about. That's what peace is. That's the fruit of it. You can deal with, you're not trying to escape um, something all the time. But for anybody who's not sure how they could forgive, like, let's say you were really wronged, the way out, the way to let go of it for good is to get to know yourself. That's why I said at the beginning, self-knowledge is all knowledge. As you get to know yourself, then you'll find out what's going on. Get to know yourself and find out if you make the right decisions all the time. And you'll probably find out that you don't, that you've done things in life that you didn't want to do, but you did it anyways. You know, like, have you ever done something and you said you would never do it, and then you find yourself doing it again? Well,
Mm.
it's
Like, can you give an example?
like, oh my gosh, I will never get that drunk again. And then
Oh.
somehow you end up doing it again.
Right, right, sure. Oh yeah, when you like learn a lesson, but then you don't actually integrate the lesson, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. Because you're the drive is stronger than the intention. And so even though you might intend to not lose your temper, if you have anger inside of you, you'll be driven to act out. It's just the drive is stronger because it's literally driving you. And so either anger drives you and you're trying to escape the world and make yourself at peace in alcohol, like if we were to take that one example. And even though you had good intentions and you said you would never do it again, something drove you to do it and you couldn't help it. And so if you'll see that about yourself, you'll see that your mother couldn't help it. She did the best she literally could, and she can't help herself, and nobody can help themselves. That's what God is for. That's the purpose of God as a concept, as a spirit, as a reality. That's the purpose of God. He will help you, but you can't do it. And so that's why we can't make anything happen in life. All we can do is surrender. So if you surrender your anger, he will take it away. And if you ask, you shall receive. But you can't make anything happen. You can't make yourself be at peace. You can't make your anger go away. Just get to know yourself and find out that sometimes you're driven by a spirit that you can't control. And it's a spiritual battle, guys. In reality, this is a spiritual battle, not a physical battle. We don't wrestle with flesh and blood. We wrestle with principalities and spirits in high places and in really deep places as well. It's very deep. So just get to know yourself and ask yourself, would you want to be hated for the ways in which you can't help yourself? And the answer is probably no. And what gives people the right to hate you when you just can't help it? So if you get to ask yourself that and realize you don't want to be hated for those things, your mom doesn't want to be hated for those things too. Your father doesn't want you to hate him for the things that he can't control. He's driven by probably that same spirit of anger, and he just can't see. And you don't hate a blind person because they're blind, right? So just realize if your parents did you wrong, if they were anything less than perfect, just realize that they are in darkness and they can't see. And that'll cause you to stop hating them because you're not going to hate somebody who's blind because they're blind. And if you don't want that darkness anymore too, if you want to be able to see yourself and get to know yourself, then ask the spirit in your heart for that. Ask God for that because he's keeping you alive. You're not doing it. You're not beating your heart. That's how I ground my spirituality. Like, feel into your chest. Are you the one doing that? And if not, then let go of control because you're not even controlling your own life. So come back to the heart and have trust in that and ask God to show you yourself. And just by getting to know yourself, that'll cause you to forgive and you will do the impossible and you'll walk on water. And then you just got to go and right your wrongs by confronting them and saying it verbally. Yeah.
Wow, that is so
It's so
intense.
simple. It's
Right,
really
it's intense
simple
but
though.
simple.
Yeah. Easy to
It's almost
overlook.
so simple that, yeah, I was just gonna say it actually. It's almost so simple that like it's completely easy to overlook, and people they dismiss it because it's just it seems so simple. And it's not necessarily easy
Mm-hmm.
though. That's the interesting thing. As you were talking, I thought of all of the like, and I guess I'm playing, I don't know, devil's advocate, pun intended, because I
Good.
thought of all the people in our community who might be kind of shook by all of this, like, because there's a level of like we are always wanting to empower others. I mean, that's Life Grove's purpose, is empowering people to like share their voice, share their message. But at the same time, what you were talking about is this huge level of humbling yourself so that you can forgive others. So it's not like it's like the biggest power move to make is to humble yourself, which is very interesting and very Christian, which I love. And I felt very resonant with that, which is kind of surprising because I've kind of done that 180 too, but I think I'm coming back 360. So you'll just,
Yeah.
like you said, a lot of it is from the same root. And I mean, I forget which one of my teachers recently said this, but saying how Christianity existed before it was called Christianity. Like the principles of peace
Mm,
and forgiveness and compassion and Christ consciousness all have always existed. It's just whether or not it had a label, whether or not it was used and abused, basically like everything else, right? So I love though how you incorporate
right.
it with astrology. It's just so wonderful. And I think it is going to be and is. I mean, I'm sure you've had people who are of the Christian faith who come to you and are trying to figure out how to integrate these seemingly impossible polarities, you know, the exoteric and the esoteric. Like people get really freaked out by mysticism, but you're such a badass because you're like you're integrated, you know? It's wonderful.
Yeah, it helps to not attach. I'm not attached to any of the words that I use or any concept or any religion or anything because it's a spiritual thing and we're just using words to describe it. So
Mm.
I can get along with the Christians, I can get along with the Catholics, I can get along with the New Agers because we're all seeking for peace, whether we know it or not, whether we admit it or not. But it's God said, my ways are simple and my path is narrow. And like the way that leads to destruction is very wide. And it's a very big temptation to just want to blame other people. But the thing about humility is to the extent that you have humility, to that extent, the divine can go to work in your life. But if you lack humility, that means your ego has the front seat and is driving you. And if you're, in other words, if you are playing God, God can't take control of your life because he said, have no mighty ones above me. And I'm not trying to be a Bible thumper, but it's just like all these scriptures just come to mind to describe this reality. So we want to be humble because then something stronger can work through us. So that's the practical thing for humility. And it's just such a trap to get puffed up and think that, oh, I am spiritual and I have the keys and I found the way. It's like, no, not at all. There's something that's driving our evolution, and if we can surrender to that current and flow down it, it'll take us where we need to go, and it'll almost be like we never existed. And this is seen in astrology. When the moon comes with the sun, we have a new moon. It's like the moon's not even there. It completely disappears. And the moon, which is the principle of reflection, is the personality, the personal self that reflects the light of consciousness in the mind and says, I am I. And then you believe the I in your head. So when the personal self comes back to your spiritual self, which is God, it's almost like you were never even there. It's like you can see that your ego has no reality. It's a fantastic tool. And the full moon represents coming into full incarnation in it. But you have to realize what's a reflection and what is the true source of light. And I would love to talk more about that and how it ties into our thoughts. And when you believe your thoughts, you're believing a lie.
Oh, yes. That, what you just said there reminds me of Muji. I don't know if you've watched his meditations at all or anything. Yes.
I love Muji.
Oh, he's amazing. I recently introduced him to some of my family members and they were like, I've been missing this my whole life. I was like, yeah, he's wonderful. And it's that idea again that it's so simple. And so your ego mind is like resisting of it because it's like, oh, this can't possibly be this simple. But then your spirit is like, oh, yes, this is my
Definitely.
language. Like, this is my surrender. And just
Yeah.
that awareness that's exactly what that reminded me of. So that's super cool. I had another question too, and it just flew right out of my mind. So, um,
Hmm.
yeah,
It'll come back.
it will. Ebbs and flows, you know. But yeah, um,
Yeah.
I've loved everything you've had to say. It's so
Thank you.
different, I think, from what we usually channel here. I remember. It came back. To
Yay.
relate it to a bit more of perhaps a new age concept, would you say that, like, when people say higher self, which I don't really like using that term, but when people use that term, do you think what they really mean is God? Like, is that what you would say instead?
You know, Alan Leo, who wrote these books here, The Art of Synthesis and Esoteric Astrology, um, he kind of he makes a very clear distinction like about the terms personality and individuality. And he says that the individuality, your individual soul, like the original you, without any colorings or adaptations to the world in the personal self, is something beyond our comprehension, and it's akin to the higher self. So it's one with God, and yet it has its own unique flavor. And it's you, it's the real you. So, but he makes it pretty clear that at that level of spiritual being, it's beyond our human comprehension. And that's why the lower self needs to be like a trained animal who loves its master, because what the animal knows is not what the master knows. And it's not to degrade us and make us think like we're an animal, but we're half animal. I mean, we have this physical body, we're in the terrestrial realm. And so when you start to obey your spirit and live for your heart, just as your heart is living for you, then you become trained, you become refined, and you trust that higher self and all the things you can't comprehend. Because like you said, the ego wants to complicate it. The ego's like, no, that's too simple. That can't be it. I got to figure it out. And so letting go of that is allowing God to figure it out, and just realize we can't figure anything out. We have no idea. So you surrender all of that, and then you free yourself up and you free up your energy, and you're not locked in your head trying to figure out the formula. You just let the creator figure it out. And so that is your higher self, who is in touch with that intelligence, which is beating your heart. And then the personal self is like, it's like me talking to you right here, giving you my personal story and how it's all been personalized and stuff. But if I identify with that, I'll be trying to look good, I'll be trying to say the right thing, and my energy will get cramped. So like, it's really, really a practical thing to surrender to God. And if you can get over the word God, like if that word doesn't like jive well with you because you've had bad past experiences or whatever, it's good to get over that so that you can create a relationship with it and not be attached to any of the words. Because if a word rubs you wrong, that means you're attached to it. So attraction and aversion are the same in that sense. You have an attachment. And if you can just let it go, then you can let it flow. And I, I'm so I think I'm going off of what your question was. Um, it was about the higher self, right?
Yeah, but I love where you've taken everything. So continue, it's fine.
Okay. um, yeah. So that's the higher self, and that's where our intuition comes from. But the personal self lives off of thoughts. And when you have anger, you can't help it because there's no anger without the thought. First, you have to believe the thought, and whatever you believe in controls you. And so if you believe the thought like, oh, this person is trying to get at me, then you'll start to become angry. And that's what the personal self lives off of. It gets life off of that. But it's not real life. You get real life through insight, through your heart. The mind thinks, but the heart knows. And it's the true light of insight, whereas the mind is a reflection. It's literally a reflection. It's an interpretation, and it's not true. Every thought that you get is a lie, every single one. And when you can know this, then you can very easily do what Muji and Sadhguru and Yogananda, all the mystics have talked about. It's very easy to sit in your heart, which is a silent, voiceless voice, because God's not whispering in your ear like a creep. He doesn't talk to you in your head. He reveals the truth to you. Just like when you walk outside, you can see the light is shining. It's like that. You just know what is true. And but your thoughts cause you to think about it and make you think that you're the one figuring it out. So if you just doubt every thought, wake up in the morning and doubt your first thought and tell me what happens, because it's a pretty magical experience. Because your thought might be like, oh, I don't want to get up in the morning. And if you just go, who is the I that it's talking about? And that, just doubt that thought and rest in the silence of your heart. It's so easy to do when you just doubt the thoughts. When you know firsthand that every thought is a lie, then it's very easy to not be deceived. Very easy.
Oh, so good. So much practical advice too, woven in the like complete metaphysics of it. I'm so grateful. And I know that a lot of people are going to like find this very helpful for them in their equinox transit, because like we said, that's going to be pretty intense and very
I hope
opportune.
so. Mm-hmm. I sure hope so. Yeah, I know it's kind of weird and different, but I like that. And if anybody has any issues with it or questions or anything, I'm very open to hearing it. I'm very open to being proven wrong. But once you can see, you can't unsee. You can't unsee it. So,
I
yeah.
know those kinds of truths.
Yeah.
I totally understand. And I'm so glad that it is different though. I think you're exactly the perspective we need in this gust of fresh air. So
Thank
thank you.
you. Awesome.
And as for how people can ask you questions, I believe we will be able to have comments on these, but I'm also not entirely sure because I'm not the technomancer of the group. So, but, how can we find you?
You can find me most easily on Instagram. My Instagram handle or username is my name, no spaces. So it's just Christian Klausner. That's where you can make contact with me if you want a reading or if you have a question. I put regular content out on that page as well. So that's where I'm at, Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you. And also I think we'll have like your other links as well up there. So Patreon and all that jazz. Um, and not to
Cool.
put you on the spot, but is there any chance that we'll be seeing you on Haven at all anytime soon?
Sure. I'm kind of just now hearing about it, to be honest.
Right. That's why I was
Haven.
like, not to put you on the spot and you don't have to decide right now, but was it intriguing at all when I told you about it?
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. And I'm definitely wanting to get more involved in community, in conscious communities. So if you guys would have me, I would love to be there.
Yay, I'm so excited. We would love to have you. Oh my gosh, wonderful. Um, oh, and lastly, I know you've like this chat was so packed, so maybe this doesn't even need to be said, but I was just wondering if there's anything that you like want to tie up together, like the biggest thing that you want people to know right now in this moment. Is there anything that comes to you?
Mm, man, I just want people to know that the issue is never what you think it is. It's our issue is the hate in our heart. That is the source of all of your conflict. And all conflict will dissolve and you'll see what is really going on and you'll be able to handle it in the right way and not overreact and remain calm and create peace inside yourself so that then we can create peace outside yourself. If you'll just realize that the issue is hate and it's a spiritual battle in life between love and hate, between right and wrong. And there's nothing physical that is the issue. That is the issue. There's no isms. It's not about anything physical. It has to do with evil, with hate. And it's a battle inside of you and outside of you. It's taking place outside as well, um, in forms of freedom and control and, all this kind of stuff. And I know that the world is so crazy, but if you'll just start doubting your thoughts about things, then your thoughts won't bring you into depressive states. They won't have the power to do that because there's no feeling without the thought. Thoughts and feelings go together like the wind and the sea. So if you will avoid where the thoughts are trying to take you, and thoughts are habitual. So the way to break the habit is well, in this case, it's to ignore the thoughts. Just realize that that's where the conflict is coming from. It's inside of you. And if you will get to know your heart Find out if there's any anger in it at all, and then see who you're angry at and go and forgive them, to release them and let them go. It doesn't mean you have to have a relationship with them. It doesn't mean you need to be buddies. Boundaries will assert themselves once you have perfect love. Your life will be the boundary, just like the light shines and it puts the boundary where the darkness is at. That'll be your life. You'll act in a perfect way all the time because you'll be guided by love and not by anger. So let the anger go and forgive, and everything will be taken care of in life. You don't need to convert to Christianity. You don't have to do any physical thing other than get that hate out of your heart so you can live in peace. And then peace on earth will happen like that. It'll happen so fast. So that's the number one thing I want people to know. It's not that you're disorganized. It's not that you're not doing the right thing. It's the hate in your heart is the source of all the conflict. Go and forgive and it'll be taken care of. I know it sounds so simple. It's freaking crazy, but it's happening every day. People are changing their lives. They're building their businesses. They're getting their courage back. They're returning to love. They're learning what real love is, how it's not a control dynamic. It's a logical spirit. And the world is beginning to get a lot brighter, and it'll just get brighter and brighter as we progress in this Aquarian age. And we're setting the stage you are setting the stage by overcoming your personal battle between love and hate. And love wins when you just let the hate go. And then God will fight the battle for you, because it's a spiritual battle. We're children. So we got to let the Father in heaven take care of it, and the Mother in heaven as well. They got us.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for that lovely message. And I think we'll end there. Thank you so much, Christian. Everyone stay tuned for more amazing videos. I'm so excited to create more of these. There will also be some live events, so keep an eye out for a schedule posted. And Christian, thank you again. I cannot say thank you enough.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yeah, of course. We will see you all again soon.
Bye-bye.